You know that feeling when you lock eyes with someone across a crowded room and for just a split second, the whole world goes quiet? Maybe it was at a coffee shop, maybe it was on a train, maybe it was just passing by on the street. And you think to yourself, what if? What if I had said something? What if they felt it too? Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating questions in human psychology. Can two complete strangers actually fall in love? And I'm not talking about Disney movie magic here. I'm talking about real, scientifically backed, this actually happens kind of love. And trust me, what science has discovered about this might completely change how you see every stranger you pass. So here's the thing. We've all been fed this story our whole lives, right? Love takes time. You need to really know someone. You can't just fall for a stranger. But then psychology comes along and says, well, actually, you kind of can. And it's not just possible, it happens more than you think. Let me explain. There's this famous study that everyone talks about, but nobody really understands. It's called the 36 Questions Study, and it was done by psychologist Arthur Aron back in the 90s. He took complete strangers, put them in a room together, and had them ask each other 36 increasingly personal questions. We're talking questions like, what would constitute a perfect day for you? Or when did you last cry in front of another person? Deep stuff, vulnerable stuff. And then, after the questions, they had to stare into each other's eyes for 4 minutes straight without talking. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that sounds awkward as hell, and you're right, it probably was at first. But here's where it gets wild. After this experiment, a significant number of these strangers reported feeling deeply connected to each other. Some even started relationships. One couple from the original study actually got married. Married. These were people who didn't know each other's names an hour before. So what happened? How did strangers become lovers in less than an hour? The secret is vulnerability. When you open up to someone, when you let them see the real you, the messy you, the parts you don't post on Instagram, something magical happens in your brain. Your brain releases oxytocin, which is literally called the bonding hormone. It's the same chemical that floods a mother's brain when she holds her newborn baby. That's how powerful this stuff is. And here's the kicker. Your brain doesn't actually care if you've known this person for 10 years or 10 minutes. All it knows is that you're being vulnerable with them, and vulnerability creates connection. But it goes even deeper than that. There's this concept in psychology called reciprocal self-disclosure, and it's basically the idea that when someone shares something personal with you, you feel compelled to share something personal back. It's like an emotional ping-pong game. They open up, you open up, they go deeper, you go deeper. And before you know it, you've created this intimate bubble that feels separate from the rest of the world. Time stops mattering. History stops mattering. All that matters is this moment, this connection, this person in front of you who suddenly feels like they understand you in a way nobody else does. And you know what's crazy? We experience micro versions of this all the time without even realizing it. Think about the last time you had a really good conversation with someone new. Maybe you met them at a party, or you sat next to them on a long flight, or you connected with them in a comment section somewhere. And for whatever reason, the conversation just flowed. You talked about real things, not just the weather or what you do for work, but like actual meaningful stuff. Your fears, your dreams, what keeps you up at night. And when you walked away from that conversation, you felt different, lighter, seen. That's the beginning of what could become love. That's your brain saying, hey, I like this person. I feel safe with this person. Maybe I could fall for this person. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but that's not real love. Real love takes time. Real love is built on shared experiences and going through hard times together and knowing someone's annoying habits and still choosing them every day. And you're absolutely right. That is love too. But here's what psychology tells us. That initial falling, that spark, that connection you feel with someone new, that's not fake just because it happened fast. It's a different stage of love, but it's still love. Psychologist Helen Fisher, who's basically the queen of love research, breaks romantic love down into 3 stages. There's lust, which is just physical attraction driven by testosterone and estrogen. Then there's attraction, which is that obsessive, can't stop thinking about them phase driven by dopamine and norepinephrine. And finally, there's attachment, which is the deep, stable, long-term bond driven by oxytocin and vasopressin. Now, when strangers fall in love, they're usually experiencing that second stage, attraction. That rush of dopamine that makes everything feel electric and possible. And yes, it takes time and shared experiences to get to that third stage of attachment, but that doesn't mean what happened in the beginning wasn't real. Here's another mind-blowing thing. Your brain can't actually tell the difference between looking at someone you're attracted to and looking at cocaine. I'm not kidding. Studies using brain imaging technology have shown that the same reward centers light up in both scenarios. When you're falling for someone, your brain is literally getting high. You're flooded with feel-good chemicals. Everything they say is funnier. Everything they do is more interesting. You have more energy. You need less sleep. You're walking around with this stupid grin on your face and you can't even help it. That's not just infatuation. That's your brain's way of bonding you to another person. And it can happen with a stranger just as easily as it can happen with someone you've known for months. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. If strangers can fall in love so easily, why doesn't it happen all the time? Why aren't we all just falling in love with every interesting person we meet? Well, there are a few reasons. First, there's proximity. We're more likely to develop feelings for people we see regularly. That's why office romances and classroom crushes are so common. Second, there's similarity. We tend to fall for people who share our values, interests, and backgrounds. It's not about being identical, but there needs to be enough common ground to build on. And third, and this is the big one, there's readiness. You can meet the most amazing person in the world, someone who checks every box, someone you have incredible chemistry with, but if you're not emotionally available, if you're still healing from something, if your life is in chaos, if you're not ready to open your heart, it's not gonna happen. Love requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires readiness. You have to be willing to take the risk. You have to be willing to be seen. And not everyone is in that place all the time, and that's okay. There's also this thing called misattribution of arousal, which sounds complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. Basically, when you experience something exciting or scary or intense with someone, your brain can mistake that adrenaline for attraction. There's this famous study where they had people walk across a scary suspension bridge, and those people were more likely to feel attracted to the researcher they met on the other side compared to people who walked across a stable bridge. Why? Because their hearts were already racing, their palms were already sweaty, and their brains said, "Oh, I must be attracted to this person." It's also why first dates that involve something exciting like rock climbing or roller coasters or horror movies tend to be more successful. You're creating that heightened emotional state that your brain associates with falling in love. So here's what all of this means for your life. Every stranger you meet has the potential to become someone important. Every conversation you have could be the beginning of something. And I'm not saying you should fall in love with everyone you talk to. That would be exhausting and unrealistic. But what I am saying is that you should stay open. You should stay curious. You should be willing to go deeper than small talk. Because you never know when that random person at the bookstore or the gym or the coffee shop could become the person who changes your whole life. And here's the really beautiful part. Even if that stranger doesn't become your soulmate or your life partner or whatever you want to call it, even if it's just a meaningful connection that lasts for one conversation or one night or one summer, that still matters. That still changes you. Every time you connect with another human being on a real level, you're proving to yourself that you're capable of being seen and loved and understood. You're practicing vulnerability. You're building your capacity for intimacy. And all of that makes you better at love, period. I think one of the saddest things about modern life is how disconnected we've become. We walk around with our headphones in, staring at our phones, building walls around ourselves. We swipe through hundreds of faces on dating apps, but we won't make eye contact with the person sitting next to us on the subway. We're so afraid of rejection, so afraid of awkwardness, so afraid of being vulnerable with the wrong person that we end up being vulnerable with no one. And we miss out. We miss out on so many potential connections, so many potential stories, so many people who could have mattered. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you feel that pull toward someone, that little spark of curiosity or connection, don't ignore it. Say something. Ask a question. Be brave enough to go beyond, "Hey, how's it going?" Be the person who's willing to have a real conversation in a world full of surface-level interactions. Because yes, it might be awkward. Yes, they might not feel it too. Yes, you might get rejected. But you also might not. You might find someone who's been waiting for someone exactly like you to take that first step. And here's the thing that psychology has proven over and over again. Humans are wired for connection. We're social creatures. We need each other. And deep down, almost everyone is hoping for the same thing. They're hoping someone will see them. Really see them. They're hoping for a conversation that goes somewhere real. They're hoping to feel less alone. So when you reach out, when you're vulnerable, when you take that risk, you're not just doing it for yourself. You're giving the other person permission to do the same. You're creating a space where connection becomes possible. Look, I'm not saying every stranger is your person. I'm not saying you should force connections that aren't there. But what I am saying is that love is more possible, more available, more within reach than we've been taught to believe. It doesn't always take years. It doesn't always require a perfect story. Sometimes it just takes 36 questions. Sometimes it just takes one honest conversation. Sometimes it just takes two people being brave enough to let their walls down at the same time. So can strangers fall in love? Yes. Absolutely yes. Science says yes. Psychology says yes. And probably your own life experience, if you really think about it, says yes too. Because somewhere in your past, there's probably someone who started as a stranger and ended up meaning everything. Maybe they're still in your life, maybe they're not. But they proved that it's possible. They proved that love can bloom in unexpected places, with unexpected people at unexpected times. And maybe that's the most hopeful thing about all of this. In a world that can feel pretty dark sometimes, in a world where we're all scrolling and swiping and moving so fast, there's still this possibility. The possibility that the next person you talk to could be the person who changes everything. The possibility that love is always just one conversation away. The possibility that you're never as alone as you think you are, because somewhere out there, there's a stranger who's looking for exactly what you have to offer, and all it takes is the courage to say hello. If this video made you think differently about love, or strangers, or the random people you pass every day, do me a favor and hit that like button. Drop a comment and tell me about a time a stranger became important to you. I love reading your stories. And if you want more videos about love, relationships, and the psychology behind why we do what we do, hit that subscribe button, because I'm just getting started. Remember, every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, be open, and be brave enough to connect. I'll see you in the next one.